At this time, I would like to again officially welcome you to tonight's webinar. This evening's session, From Membership to Leadership, Organizing and Mentoring the Next Generation of ESP Leaders, is going to be presented by Amy Morin from Massachusetts, who is also the Lexington Education Association Vice President, and Sonia Fortin, former ESP, who now works for the Massachusetts Teacher Association as an ESP organizer. So at this time, I will turn it over to Amy.
Thanks again, Jess. Welcome, everybody. Sonia and I are very excited and happy that you joined us tonight. So you can go on to the next slide, please. And this is our agenda for tonight. We're going to do an ESP Engagement Spectrum. What makes it difficult for ESP engagement? Opportunities for ESPs to be engaged in leadership. We're going to give you some examples from Massachusetts that we're currently doing. Program structure and curriculum for mentorship program. Challenges and lesson learned. And strategic planning and commitments to ESPs in your states. So I'm going to pass it over to Sonia.
Thank you, Amy. Jessica, we're going to go to the next slide. So the first thing that we wanted to do with you guys tonight is to look at the level of engagement. So in the chat, we're going to ask you to write number 1 through 5 and you're attached with your state next to it. So write 1 if the ESPs are not engaged in your state or locals, and that's not about you, it's generally around in your state. 2, if the ESPs are engagement is low in your local or state. 3, if they're somewhat engaged. 4, if they're very engaged. And 5, if their ESPs are leading your state association. So I see a lot of 2s, some 3s, 1 4, 1 5 from Olivia. Nice. And make sure that you put your state too. So that's important. So the reason why we're asking about the level of engagement is that it's important as leaders to recognize where you are, and it will help you kind of as we go through this presentation, it will help you to think about like where Massachusetts is and where you guys are and what we did, and perhaps like it's going to help you kind of generate some ideas of like where you would like to move. So without knowing where you start, your starting point is difficult to see like what next steps that you need to take. So for example, if your ESPs are not very engaged in your state or local, then you know like the next step for you might be that, you know, like getting some groups together to have discussion to figure out like why do people are not engaged. I'm going to pass it on next to Amy on the next slide.
Thanks, Sonia. Thanks, Jess. So now, what makes it difficult for ESPs to be engaged in union work? You can write those thoughts in the chat as well. So some possible reasons could be no time, multiple jobs, gatekeeping, doing union work means that you lose income, right? Lack of opportunities, lack of union skills related to learning opportunities, lack of respect. I see this chat is going. Second job, feel less than, yes. Not knowing the union is present. Different shifts. Family commitments is a big one. Not enough time between teaching, second job, pay. Yeah, for sure. People don't want to get involved. Work burnout is a big one, for sure. Union not being transparent, not being engaged, less training opportunities, for sure. Just reading some more things. Not being certified and not being utilized because you're not a licensed educator. Intimidation is a big one, for sure. The structure of education and the importance placed on ESP. Yep, not enough time, need to work several jobs with extra hours in order to survive. Yep. And I see a thing from Grace, just make sure that you're choosing everyone when you're sharing in the chat so that it's going to everyone and not just certain people. Thank you. Union lacking understanding of certified ESPs, New York's teaching assistants. Yep. Not enough time for sure. Okay, so we will circle back to this, but you can go on to the next slide, please.
So we wanted to give you some example of things that we've done in Massachusetts. And a lot of these things were led by ESPs, which makes it so much more impactful. So one of the first things that started happening in Massachusetts is that our state affiliate president, vice president, and leadership kind of recognized that ESPs needed more space, and they created that space. And part of it is that ESPs were asking for it and pushing for it, and then there was an openness and welcome, things became very welcoming for ESPs to be part of the whole state association. So one of the first things that started happening was that the MTA invited ESPs to be part of the bargaining summit. The way we're bargaining in Massachusetts is that we're really transforming how bargaining is happening. We have expanded bargaining, which we're bringing silent representatives. So it's like all members of the association can be part of the bargaining. And I know some states don't have bargaining, but in Massachusetts we do. So that's something that's been happening. And Amy and I were invited to be part of the committee that developed the summit for that for two years in a row. So that really helped the bargaining teams that were there, mostly teachers, to hear what ESPs needed. And it helped transform slowly the locals, how they bargain. Another thing that we did, and we're gonna give you some links so you guys can see what it looks like. The all-in blueprint was the MTA wanted to change their strategic priorities for the entire association, and they invited ESPs to be part of that. So again, it was to bring the voice of ESPs and to make sure that they recognize. And throughout the entire blueprint, you can see specifically where ESPs are named throughout the document. And then another thing that MTA is doing very well is that they're trying to appoint ESPs on every single committee. And that again helps to have the voice of ESPs. Another very important piece of the work that we've been doing since 2019 is to develop the ESP Bill of Rights, which is now something that we're using at the bargaining table, and we've launched a living wage campaign. And the work that the ESP Bill of Rights is a set of demands that we have that we can use as bargaining tools, but it's everything from a living wage, from health and safety. We want to make sure that we are receiving professional development that's meaningful and impactful. So the group was a group of ESPs that got together and worked for about 2 years to really figuring out who the ESPs were across Massachusetts by doing a survey. And then from the feedback, we developed the ESP Bill of Rights. And now the locals are endorsing the ESP Bill of Rights, and they're actually using it as a bargaining tool, which has been very impactful. And because of that, and maybe not just because of that, but just the way bargaining has been transforming in Massachusetts, ESPs are making some substantial gain through bargaining. For example, we have a local Somerville that has went from a $20,000 base salary to $35,000 in a 2 contract cycle. So we're making some really huge gain here. And then MTA has committed through funding and promoting projects that are focusing on leadership development. part of the project that we're going to talk to you about. Our ESP Leadership Mentoring Program was funded through the MTA and also the NEA. But without the funding, it's very hard to start a new project. So we're very lucky. And then the last thing, ESPs are starting to be elected on board positions. So we went from maybe one ESP to now we have close to 8 or 9 ESPs are actually on the board of directors. There are usually positions that were held by teachers. And now they're really leading big decision. For example, there's a new NBI, new business item that was put forward to change the name of the Massachusetts Teacher Association to make it more inclusive. We don't know what it's going to be like, but the word teacher is definitely gonna not be part of it. And that was created by a group of ESPs. So that was, it's extremely impactful. Next slide.
So we're going to talk about an example from Massachusetts, the ESP Leadership Mentoring Program. And so in Massachusetts, we decided to take one step further. We're going to give you an example on how MT leadership is truly committed into giving ESPs the space to do union work. So the example is the ESP Leadership Development and Funding was to create an ESP Leadership Mentoring Program. So why did we do this? Well, we needed to know our why. Why were we willing to create this program? And our why is to cultivate and support emerging ESP leaders to further their potential and goals so that ESPs are leading voices that collectively transform our unions, public schools, and communities. And we also needed to know our purpose, which is ESP Leadership Mentoring Program will support emerging ESP leaders throughout their leadership development journey. And we believe that the most effective way to establish this new statewide program is to put the ownership of the initiative on current ESP leaders so that we have a slogan, it's for ESPs by ESPs, because if we want it to be for us, we need to do the work in order to get there. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you.
So our program, the idea of starting the statewide ESP Leadership Mentoring Program came from a course that we took. So Amy and I went to DC to do the NEA Supporting Our Own Through Mentoring. So the program really helps you develop your school-based mentoring program. And we decided to take it a step further, like Amy said, and develop our mentoring program, but we really wanted to focus on leadership development and organizing skills. So the way we look at things is that if it doesn't build power, and when we say power, it's like we want the ESPs to be leading our union. And if it doesn't build power, then we have to like start thinking like, is it worth, the time and investment, right, of whatever you're doing. So we always want to focus on what people want to work on to, uplift themselves and each other, and by keeping a mindset of the organizing skills that people need to have. So I think one of the things too, after we worked on this project, developed this project, we assembled a team of ESP leaders that had the skills and really got together to create the mentoring program that we thought was meaningful for us. I'm going to pass it on to Amy.
Can we go on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So now we're going to talk about the program structure. So we had some primary goals, and those included cultivating and supporting the emerging ESP leaders through the peer-to-peer mentoring program, to create opportunities for ESPs to take on local and statewide leadership roles, to generate a pipeline of effective and skilled union and education leaders grounded in rank and file strategies and approaches. To advance MTA's social, racial, and economic justice priorities through ESP member engagement and activism. And funding. So we, as Sonia said, we got funding through the NEA and also through the MTA through the Public Relation Organizing Grant, which was nearly $55,000. So if we're committed in creating leadership opportunities for ESPs and to create that space for ESPs to become more engaged, including within leadership positions, then you have to make a real commitment. So you need, like, states need to fund projects. They need to offer programs for leadership development. They need to allocate staff time to support ESPs, including having a UNISERV or organizer dedicated solely to ESPs. So if your state doesn't have that, you should really think back and say, like, you know, how can we raise the voices of ESPs? How can we uplift these people so that our state can be one of the leading states in the nation creating change for ESPs? We can go on to the next slide. And we're going to talk about curriculum. So we believe that ESPs have the freedom to identify their leadership development needs. We're not all the same, right? We all have different needs. We're all at different places, but we had to create a space where we could work collaboratively. Can't speak English tonight, you guys, I apologize, to develop such programs. We needed to build our own professional development pathways and be given respect and trust to know what the best way to achieve our program goals. So as a team, we spent about a year to develop workshops that helped our mentees strengthen their leadership skills, which included the NEA leadership competencies. Our workshops included knowing your why, true colors, membership to leadership, difficult to courageous conversations, and those are just to name a few. Everything we created was done with an organizing lens, with the mutual understanding that if it didn't build power and uplift each other, it wasn't worth doing. And also, we used the NEA leadership competency framework in order to guide the work that we did. You can go on to the next slide.
So I just wanted to add to Amy about the last point that she made about the NEA leadership competency framework. We really dived into this framework, and we had the mentees and also the mentors also take the assessment. So that's something you can do online. And from that, they created their kind of journey, their plan of what they wanted to do and set goals. And the mentor used that to when they were meeting with their mentees to discuss like their plan. So it really helped guide the conversation, but it also helped everybody, even the mentors, to like see like where they needed to go with their own leadership development. And at the end of the program, they redid the assessment to see like how much growth they had done. And it was a very impactful tool for us to use. And another way that we use it was, you know, like if you apply to present, let's say for the NEA ESP conference, you have to use some of these metrics. So by people being exposed to it, it helps them later on when they want to develop a workshop to use those guides to put into their workshop, because it has to be aligned with, you know, the workshop always have to be aligned with the competencies. So it becomes like kind of a dual purpose when it's for leadership development, for personal, but also they can use it later on if they want to create workshops.
Sonia, can I jump in? I just want to make sure everybody can see the slides before we move on, because I see somebody having trouble, and then Jessica asked. Can you guys just say yes or no if you guys can see the slides? I just don't want people to be.
Thank you.
Some people are saying no. Most of them are saying yes, though, Jess. Most of them are saying yes. I think 2 of them couldn't see it, so. It just came back on. Okay, we're good. Thanks, Sonia. Sorry.
So the next part that we're going to talk about is challenges and lessons. So like you can see, like we spent a whole year, the group working together to develop this program. But we also realized, and we had to acknowledge, that although the mentors that came as part of the team, they were all leaders in their own rights, in their own local, the state level. Everybody came in with a different level of competencies. You know, let's say using Google platform, which was a place where we use a lot to store all our material. If you weren't competent or you had difficulty navigating Google, so that we had to create training specific to that. So one of the things that we created was to develop a training library that everybody had access to, and that became kind of like a mutual mentoring. So we talk about mentoring, but we also want to recognize that everybody has different skills and they all come and can share something that they know. And that's both the mentors and the mentees. And everybody having access to this platform where there were like tons of trainings that people could take, whether or not it was links that brought them to different trainings, or it was like a 5-minute video that was created to, this is how you create the basis of a workshop. And that everybody identified whether or not they were proficient in that specific training, or if they needed help, or if they were all set, like they knew enough about it, but not enough to help somebody else. So this way, like it became this big table that people could see, like, hey, Amy is really good at doing Facebook, but I need help on that, so I can connect with Amy. And it didn't matter if it was a mentee or mentor. So now we continue to develop this platform, and it's becoming like a bank of like awesome trainings that people have access to, and everybody in our program has access to. Another thing too that we had some challenge, but also like something that we learn is like, how do we make a program sustainable? Both in engagement, spending a whole year for ESPs that are leaders, they're already like running their locals, they're part of committees of the MTA, they're part of the board of directors. They have a lot on their plate. And how do you sustain their engagement to keep wanting to give to the program? That was sometimes it was a little bit tricky. It's hard to find times for everybody to meet at the same time. But at the end of the day, people believed in the program and they believed in the dream, and they still believe in the dream. And that's like the most rewarding part of this work, is that I see Amy smiling. It's like, it's so cool to see, like people see, like they have the big vision, and they see like where we're going with this, and they want it to be successful, because like it's for ESPs by ESPs. Like I'm a staff now at the MTA, so, but I was part of this group that created that when I was an ESP, and I, you know, I'm super dedicated, and now I can continue this work by supporting as the ESP organizer, which is very cool. Another thing that we also needed to do was to be very democratic. So the group, the mentor, the core group of people that started this project, you know, we all have different personalities, different opinions, but it was always important for us to be democratic. So when we had big decisions, we had to make sure that we were all on the same page. And if we sometimes had to take a vote, and if, you know, the most people that, you know, if you have 4 against 1, then so be it. But one thing that we always acknowledge is that once the group makes a decision, then we have to support it, no matter what. And we always function that way. And another part of it that we I think did very well to empower the team's expertise. So recognizing, you know, we had somebody that might have had some harder time to create a PowerPoint, but it was an excellent editor. So we look at those expertise and really let people shine. And we never dictated like, this is what you need to do. But like, what can you do? What can you participate in? What can you bring on? And then we made conscientious effort to make sure that everybody had opportunity to shine within the group. Another thing was developing relationship, and we had to do that through lots of conversation and advocacy. It's extremely important to build a relationship with cohort of people, of ESPs. The work is hard enough. And the core group that was part of this project were all people that I had developed a strong relationship with, and I knew that I could rely on, and we all became extremely good friends, and we can rely on each other, and we always show up. So that's been very important in our work. And the same thing with the mentees. The first, we started a pilot to see like what we needed, what was working, what didn't work. And the mentees that came on were another exceptional group of ESPs, leader in their own right. And they were all people that we knew we could trust and gave us very good feedback, what worked, what didn't work. And we had to tweak some of the things, but you know, we're again relationship that we got to develop, and now we know that we can always tap on their shoulders. And part of our program was to build the next generation of mentors. So when the first group of ESPs came on, it was always with the intent that they would kind of become the mentors for the next group. So this way we always have like an ongoing group of people to mentor. And that's part of, you know, making sure that everything is sustainable. And then again, funding, we had to become extremely creative with that. One of the things that Amy, I'm not sure if she mentioned, but we wanted to make sure that the ESPs that were doing the work got paid, and they got paid a living wage. So that was very important to us. So we're always looking for a funding. But now the MTA is like even more committed. We're not necessarily have to go through grants, but now our next phase is to make sure that our program becomes part of the structure of the MTA. So this way, like we're funded through another division, as opposed to us always having to look for funding. But we're working on it, and we'll see where that goes. But we're definitely working on it, and we're not gonna let it go till we get what we need. So anyway, I think that's it for me right now. Grace, I don't know. I know like we're running fast, but we would love to hear if you guys have questions. And I'm gonna think Grace or Jessica, I don't know if you had something to read.
All right, so yeah, we're running a little early, but that's okay. We do have some questions that have come in, and this will allow for a little bit more time for some Q&A. So thank you so much, Amy and Sonia, for sharing your experiences in that engaging presentation. And so we are going to go ahead and open up the floor to have some engagement around question and answer engagement. So please feel free to put questions, continue to put questions in the Q&A feature. Please don't put them in the chat. Put them in the Q&A feature so that we can see them, and we'll address them in the order that they are coming in, and we will continue to address them until we run out of time. So Grace will facilitate it. So I'm going to pass it over to Grace to facilitate the questions as they come in.
So Grace, just before you go, I just want to mention that we do have our email address from the leadership mentoring program. So if you guys have questions or you want, you know, meet with us one-on-one,
Yes.
or anybody from our group, please feel free to email us directly, and we'll answer questions later on.
Right. Well, that's an incredible offer, Sonia. Thank you for that, for you and Amy. As everyone can see, that email address is right on the slide. And so just as Sonia said, feel free to contact them, and they will provide you any additional information. I want to thank Amy. I want to thank Sonia. Sonia is no longer one of our ESP facilitators because she has moved over to a staff role, but they are both incredible people. And if you didn't notice, Sonia's voice is actually never that husky. She is not feeling well. So, but she's always committed. So thank you for showing up, Sonia, even though you probably shouldn't have, right? So I have some questions here. So we'll ask the questions to both of you. And we have a question. Wow, we have quite a few questions. Okay, so from Robbie Reed, what was the budget for the first year of your leadership mentor program? So I'm assuming Robbie is actually looking for a specific dollar amount. And then she says over the first 3 years, and where did the funds come from? Which Sonia, I think you talked about, but.
Yeah, so I'll answer that question because I'm the grant writer. So the MTA through the public relation grant gave us 54,400. So almost $55,000. And the bulk of the money actually went to pay stipends for people. So in Massachusetts,
Right.
at the time when we started the work, the living wage was $28 an hour. And so we looked at, 5 hours a week, for the whole year. So you can think about like how much that adds up. And then to pay for, meeting time, materials that we needed, training materials and all that. And
Right.
then we had another grant through NEA to fund our pilot. And we got, I think, about $16,000 to fund the pilot program, which we just finished. And now we're looking for funding through both NEA and the MTA.
Right. And I'm sure with your assistance that all of that will happen. So great. And then let's hear, Robbie is full of questions. Robbie has another question. Robbie is asking what specific supports, and I think you already addressed some of this, Sonia, which is what specific supports did your state organization provide to this program? So she's thinking, we just talked about the funds, but did they provide any personnel, trainers, training?
I can answer, Amy. I don't know if you want to.
Sure. I mean, you can answer first and then I can tag on after.
So in Massachusetts, we do have a staff, an ESP organizer, which is now it's me, but in the past, that staff was assigned to our project. So that person providing us with some guidance, but most of it in relation to the staff is that we wanted it to be for ESPs by ESPs. So we could have gone to the MTA through their training and learning department and say like, hey, we need curriculum on this and this and this, which would have been easy, quite frankly,
Right.
time saving quite a bit, but that was not the intent. Part of us, we wanted to learn the process of what it's like to develop solid workshop that was really dedicated to us and not just like a cookie cutter kind of a professional development or workshop. So, we wanted to do it by ourselves. But another thing that the MTA did for us was that we were able to use their offices. We have 5 regional offices throughout Massachusetts, and we were able to use their space without any issues. And, like when we needed to order some stuff, we had, help.
Right.
So that's.
So you had some in-kind support.
And
That's good.
one of the things too, at the beginning, we realized that people didn't really struggle to develop workshops. So we had a staff that came and spent a day with us to train us on how to develop workshop and how to facilitate workshop on popular education. So that was extremely helpful to us.
That's great.
And as Sonia said, we wanted it to be from us, but the thing is, we had all this knowledge, right? Like we have all these different people who bring different expertise. So it was like, how do we get that knowledge out? And because as Sonia said, we could have just gone to the professional learning portion and said, we want to, give us a workshop on this. But because we had a member who was very passionate that is also a vice president and was like, no, I've done like the membership to leadership and I want to like show like the knowledge that I have in inside of me, and it just makes it that much more worth it, right? When you've done the work, you've committed to it. So yeah, I think it was really meaningful to have it come from us, by us.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I have quite a few other questions. So I have a question from Steven Alvarez, and I happen to know Steven's from Seattle. He's asking, what are some strategies to help engaged ESPs to become mentees? I'm going to assume, so what were the how did you identify your mentees in your program? Was it through an application process or?
So we had, we wanted to choose people who have been through certain things through the MTA that we knew were on their leadership journey, so that they weren't just like starting off like a new member,
Right.
never done this before, I have no idea what I'm doing, because, you know, we wanted to make sure that after we took our statewide like leadership, it was called Leaders for Tomorrow. I don't know what it's called now, Sonia, if you, anyway. Sorry.
ESPLI.
Yeah,
Right.
so that's the
Leadership Institute.
Yeah, that's the national one. For our state, I don't know if it's the same thing, but anyways, it was Leader for Tomorrow, and you know, that was a great, you know, step. Like we did the leadership, but then it was like, now what? Like, what do we do now? So that's why we wanted to make sure we fostered that leadership growth, and so that people who have it's not a prerequisite, but you know, we did look for recent graduates of that program because we wanted to take it one step further so that they had continuous mentoring on how they could just continue to grow in their leadership roles instead of just like, now what?
Right. I do want to mention there are a few questions here that we will be answering, but I'm just going to kind of make my best decision here that they may not be questions specifically that Amy and Sonia can answer. So if you notice that your question isn't being addressed, just know that we will respond to you by writing. So we do have another question here. So they said, Katie, and I'm not pronouncing this correctly, Bogert is asking, when you started statewide, like did you start immediately statewide, or did smaller chapters start and then branch out? What if the state has a lot of chapters and there is not a uniform method of mentorship for ESPs?
I'll take that one, Amy. So we do not have chapters, but we have region in Massachusetts. And at the beginning, I talked about the NEA mentoring through our own program. So that's like usually geared towards district, school-based kind of mentoring program. Our program from the get-go was for statewide. And we just brought in, no matter what region they were from, we just brought in from different regions. So we're trying to like open up Massachusetts as opposed to creating barriers and everybody does work differently. We have regional caucuses and we have different networks. But we really wanted to create like this open space where people could come together and work on their skills, whatever that is. So we didn't limit ourselves to where people are from. And I know the region or it can be a little bit tricky, but we just opened it up. And it was from the get-go.
Right.
So we're very, very different. In that sense that we're focusing on school-based, we really are focusing on union leadership and organizing.
Right. So I think we probably have the time to ask one additional question. And I'm actually going to ask my own question. I'm going to be selfish and ask both Amy and Sonia. So what, like what one piece of advice or what would be the first step, in your opinion, if someone who's here on the webinar is actually considering developing a, ESP leadership mentoring program? Like what would that, the first step or the most important piece of advice, what would that be? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that they need to, if they're driven and they have that passion and they want to, complete it in their state or even local to start, find someone that will work with you and has similar passion, because it definitely takes a village. It's not something you can do on your own, and it is very time consuming. But if you have that passion, you're going to succeed because you're going to want to see it come to life. And we are here to help you because Sonia and I have that passion, and Sonia and I found each other in our 2019 leadership thing, and it just kind of blossomed from there. So yeah, that would be my advice, is to make sure you have some help along the way.
Oh, absolutely.
And then I'll answer that question too. Dream big, and don't be limited. If somebody says no, just go somewhere else and keep knocking on the doors. And I think the most important thing about this project is relationship development, both with the cohort of core mentors, with the mentees, but also with our state affiliate and relationship with the NEA.
Right.
We were extremely intentional with the work and how we approach people, because we had a big dream, and it was too important for us to fail. So just keep pushing, but relationship is key.
Well, I'm actually disappointed that you didn't mention that they should take the training that we offer.
Well, I mentioned it at the beginning.
I'm going to put the link right into chat. But this is a mentoring course that's currently now available in NEA's learning management system. And it is a learning path course of 4 separate courses that you can take independently. And it's going to walk you through a curriculum of all the best practices, provide you tools and all of the knowledge to develop your own mentoring program, whether that be, leadership mentoring, the way that Amy and Sonia are doing, or it may be a worksite mentoring program that you're interested in. So I shared that URL in chat. And let me just see if there's any other questions, because I supposedly we do have a little bit of time.
As Grace is looking in the chat, I do want to give a shout out to the ESP mentoring course, only because I've taken it twice. I took it once in person with some colleagues of mine from my local. We went to Washington, D.C. We were really excited to bring it back to my local, and then COVID hit, but it's coming back around. So it's not dead yet. And then I took it again with the mentors through the statewide leadership program to, do it in a different lens. And then this last time I was part of the facilitators. So it's an amazing program. And so if you haven't taken it yet,
thank you. It's okay that you didn't say that earlier. You're forgiven. Okay, so let's see here. All right, I think that those are all of the questions. And I'm going to give everyone maybe a second more to ask a question. Otherwise, someone said, thank you for being such amazing mentors. And I think we are done. Jessica?
To request a general session-specific certificate of completion as a participant of a recorded session, please send your request by email to espqweb@nea.org. All requests must include the session title and the on-screen certificate of completion code. Session certificates will not be provided if your viewer code is not included in the email request. Due to limitations in our ability to track attendance for recorded sessions, personalized certificates can only be provided for participants of live webinars whose attendance can be verified. The certificate received for viewing recorded sessions will be session-specific, but will not include personalized names. On behalf of the Center for Professional Excellence in Student Learning's NEA ESP Quality Department, I would like to once again thank our presenters, Amy Morin and Sonia Fortin, for their presentation tonight, and thank our participants for joining us. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and good night from the NEA ESP Quality Department.